and really trying to make the very best wine you can to figure out how to can wine. And just like when you start any category, there's always those people that are kind of like out there doing it way before anyone else is doing it. Everyone thought it was stupid. That vineyard is at 6,800 feet, and that is the highest commercial vineyard in North America. The Ordinary Fellow, at least, is really focusing on like traditional French varietals. That's about as geeky as it gets, because that's like single vineyard, single grower, single clone. I think my wines do well with a lot of different food.
Today we're here with Ben Parsons, winemaker behind The Ordinary Fellow in Palisade, Colorado. Ben, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I want to teach people and share people what wines you're making today and help our audience really get to know the vineyards, the taste profile, and what Palisade, Colorado is bringing to the wine world. You were the winemaker of a very successful urban winery, the Infinite Monkey Theorem, and then you chose to move on to where you are now at The Ordinary Fellow. What was that transition like for you?
Yeah, it was the Infinite Monkey Theorem was really like about disrupting the wine industry and trying to make wine like fun and relevant and like accessible. And so I was actually the founder, or I am the founder of that winery as well as the winemaker. And you know, we were the first wine in the US to put wine in the can. We started kegging in 2008. Really about like creating like these urban winery spaces, just like a tap room for like a craft brewery in a city where everyone could come down and enjoy. And yeah, I mean, after 11 years of taking that to 100,000 case production distributed in 42 states, you know, there was a really good opportunity for me to get back to what I wanted to do, I suppose, which is like be in the vineyard. Even though that might sound like a cliche to the listeners, there is something quite romantic about farming and being surrounded by nature and really trying to make like the very best wine you can from fruit that you grow, from Colorado fruit, and putting it in a bottle versus buying someone else's wine and putting it in a can. They're like two very different things. And so, yeah, I had an opportunity to take over a vineyard in southwest Colorado, down in the Four Corners, just outside of Cortez, so where the Four Corners meet. And yeah, it was in disrepair and kind of hadn't been pruned in 4 years. So kind of got back in there, and just about now it's looking really good. So that's taken 4 years. And yeah, it's relatively small. It's 13 acres of Riesling, Chardonnay, Cabernet Sauvignon. Sits at 6,000 feet elevation, so very, very high for a commercial vineyard. And it's beautiful. It sits on a national monument called the Yucca House, which is an unexcavated ancestral Puebloan ruin from between the 10th and 12th century. And it stares at Mesa Verde, which most people are familiar with for the ancestral cliff dwellings from the Pueblans down there. And yeah, it's just a beautiful location. And so yeah, two very different things, but kind of coming full circle almost as to what I got into the industry in the beginning back in the late 90s, and now kind of back there, but doing it on my own.
So for our audience who's going to go to wine country this weekend or this summer, perhaps, when they get the opportunity to walk the vineyard, from your point of view, what should they be looking at? What should they be excited about? What's so exciting about walking the vineyard, working in the vineyard?
You know, I think it's really like the idea that you could grow something from like rootstock, farm it, just, you know, suffer the vagaries of like agricultural production, like deal with all of those challenges and do it in like a sustainable way. But then, you know, just determine when you're going to pick that fruit, take it into the winery, ferment it, turn it into wine, age it in a barrel, bottle it, decide on the branding, decide on the naming, come up with a label design, take it to all of those small awesome restaurants that everyone wants to hang out at because they're making great food and getting good press. And you see my wine, or I see my wine on someone else's table, like drinking it, and to think where that came from and how many times those grapes got moved from A to B and then back from B to C and then C to D, like whether it be like shoveling grapes with a pitchfork through a destemmer or shoveling fermented grape marc into a press with a Home Depot bucket or picking that case up and taking it from here to here, like that got handled so many times, so much went into that I think there's a huge disconnect amongst most consumers as to how wine gets from a vineyard and a grape to a bottle. Most people think it just ends up on a grocery store shelf and is $5.99 a bottle, and that is not the case.
Back during the Infinite Monkey days, you probably, I want to say, I don't know if this is too strong of a word, you led the movement to canned wines. Is that it more or less accurate? Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I genuinely believe that. Like in 2009, we entered into a R&D project with Ball Corporation, the largest supplier of aluminum cans in the world, to figure out how to can wine. And everyone thought it was stupid. And everyone just kind of turned their noses up at it and thought that RTD wine and RTD drinks were stupid.
So now today, all these years later, two questions. One is, how does it feel to go to a grocery store and just see shelves and shelves and shelves? Everybody has canned wines. And I mean, no offense, you could probably teach an entire master class on this just because of where it was 10 years ago and where it is today. So how does it feel seeing it become so incredibly popular, and any big lessons you learned from that experience?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough question because I think that canned wine is good because of its use occasion primarily, and where you can take it and where you can drink it. Now, very rarely do I see people putting the best wine they've ever made in a can. So I think it's all about where you want to drink it, who you want to drink it with. And so there's definitely this kind of utility aspect to it, and that kind of, and also price point wise, you don't see that many canned wine 4-packs above $16, I would say. So price wise, it's fairly economical from a sustainability perspective. It makes a lot of sense. But from an absolute quality perspective, you're probably still going to be buying bottled wine over canned wine. It's all about where you're going to consume it. And so, sometimes when I see it, I think about, just like when you start any category, there's always those people that are kind of out there doing it way before anyone else is doing it. And it's those people that usually don't reap the benefits of it because they put all of the effort into it. And then all of a sudden it was oh, okay, yeah, canned wine. That's a good idea. And 10 years later, people I still see, I look at LinkedIn occasionally and I'm just baffled by these people that think that it's a new thing. It just blows my mind. Same with keg wine,
Ben, you've been described as a winemaker, a brand builder, a creative thinker, and a market disruptor. With all of those titles above or behind you, or how you want to position it, you chose to be in Palisade, Colorado, making your wine. Tell us a little bit about the region, why you chose it, what's special about it, why we should come visit you in Colorado.
Yeah, Palisade is it's beautiful. It's on the western slope of Colorado. It's about a 4-hour drive west of Denver over the mountains, and it's about 4.5 hours east of Salt Lake City. And it's an American viticultural area designated called the Grand Valley, and it's pretty stunning. You come through this canyon called the Tibet Canyon. On the north side, you have these Book Cliff Mountains that kind of rise above you. On the south side, you have the Colorado River, and it's a very kind of niche microclimate. And it's definitely an agricultural community. What a lot of people don't realize because they just drive straight past on I-70, is that really it's just proximity to all things good, kind of outdoorsy. So within 28 minutes, I could be at a local ski resort called Powderhorn, which got 32 feet of snow last year. Like, I'm an hour and a half from Aspen. I'm an hour and 20 minutes from Moab. I'm 10-minute drive from Fruta, which has the best mountain biking in the world. Like there's like it's all kind of old like Ute Indian territory. There's wild mustangs up on the Book Cliffs. It's known for its fruit. It's actually known for its peaches, believe it or not, and has some of the best peaches grown anywhere in the United States, arguably the best. But it's a very small microclimate. Palisades around 4,500 feet elevation. There's about 26 wineries you can tour and visit. Take a few days, spend a weekend. There's some good local restaurants, growing their own produce and making some like real good kind of farm to table food. And yeah, Grand Junction is a city that in the last 5 years has really exploded. And Grand Junction is 10 minutes from Palisade, just to be clear. It went through a series of kind of boom and busts during like the oil shale kind of business back in the day, but now kind of strongly focused on tourism, and lots of people leaving the Front Range of Denver, Denver, Colorado Springs, moving to the Western Slope for kind of quality of life, and also we have a lot of California transplants as well, just because it is cheaper to live. You are outdoors all the time. You can travel long distances very quickly. I've put 42,000 miles on my car this year, like delivering wine all over the state of Colorado, basically.
Oh my
So
gosh.
yeah, I feel like this particular area has a lot going for it, and definitely more than enough to fill, a long weekend or a week's trip, just kind of exploring vineyards, food, farms, outdoor opportunities, taking a trip to Moab. It's really pretty, and it's one of the reasons I moved here. I mean, I'd been in the city for a long time. I grew up just south of London in England, but I lived in London for some time, and I loved it when I was young, and I love Denver as well, because I feel like when I started the Infinite Monkey Theorem, that was really kind of when a lot of people were moving to Denver, and it was becoming, something substantial. It was one of the fastest growing cities in the country at that time, and I feel like we were a big part of, pushing that growth, and in tandem with like the other food and beverage scene, like craft breweries and good restaurants. And so, it's with two young kids, like 8 and 10-year-olds, it really made a lot of sense to take the opportunity to kind of get to somewhere where I wanted to be rather than somewhere I had to be.
So we're going to get into the wine geek stuff now. Let's talk about your vineyards. You have Colorado Box Bar, Hawk's Nest, probably more. So let's talk through what land you acquired, what the soil type is like, elevation, all the things that a wine geek wants to hear about. Talk us through your vineyard space.
Yeah, so Box Bar is in Cortez. Sits around between 6,000 and 6,200 feet elevation. It's on this Weatherall loam that has some clay in it, which has these like water retention properties. It is essentially a desert, so you do have to drip irrigate. Less than 7 inches of precipitation a year, so very, very little rainfall, which is good in some ways, in that there is very little disease pressure, so you're not having to spray. There's no necessity to spray for powdery mildew or anything down at our vineyard. So it's essentially farmed very minimalistically, like, and very sustainably, which I know people appreciate. And so that's the Box Bar. That's Riesling, Cabernet Sauvignon, Chardonnay. Although we're just planting some Chenin Blanc and some Charbonneau, which is an Italian red varietal there as well. And then Hawk's Nest is not my own property, but I work with a grower called Guy Drew, who planted Pinot Noir, 4 different clones of Pinot Noir, and 2 different clones of Chardonnay there. That vineyard is at 6,800 feet, and that is the highest commercial vineyard in North America. Similar soil properties as the Box Bar, and yeah, making some really good Pinot Noir out of there. And I think what's interesting about Colorado is, we have a very short growing season, like 155 to 165 days. Napa has 240 days. That's frost-free days. So the thing is that we have such high sunlight exposure because of the elevation and the ultraviolet light, that we have the same number of degree days as Napa Valley. So we can ripen like Cabernet Sauvignon, but we're ripening it in a shorter period of time. So that's fairly unique to kind of consider. And so the Ordinary Fellow, at least, is really focusing on like traditional French varietals, from Chenin Blanc, Chardonnay, Cabernet Sauvignon, Syrah, that kind of thing. And then, interestingly, most recently, we took over a vineyard in Utah. So I'm actually farming a vineyard in Utah, about an hour and a half's drive from Moab, called Montezuma Canyon Ranch. And that's this ancient sandstone with a little bit of clay in there that was planted in 2007, 12 acres of Chenin Blanc, Merlot, Riesling, and Chardonnay. But we made an awesome Utah rosé last harvest, 2023, which we just released. And you don't see that many wines from Utah, so that's kind of why I'm kind of excited about it, just because, I think there's only 6 wineries in Utah, and I'm not sure that many of them get their fruit from Utah. So.
You mentioned a moment ago, and I hope I heard you correctly, that you have one of the highest peaks in the country for wine. Did I hear that correctly?
Highest commercial vineyard in North America.
What are the pros and cons, the benefits and the disadvantages to high elevation?
Yeah, that's a good question. So if you think about spending any time up a mountain, it can be really warm, but as soon as the sun goes down, it gets very cold. And so having high elevation vineyards, even though you might be in quite a hot growing region, as soon as the sun goes down, the temperature does drop. And so you have a large diurnal temperature shift. So in Cortez, during the growing season, or during ripening at least, say mid-September, late September, we could be like 85 to 90 in the day, but 45 to 50 at night, which is a really big temperature swing. It basically means that the vine has a kind of chance to just shut down and rest. And what that means from a enology perspective is really that you can retain more natural acidity in the fruit because it's not being metabolized by having like a lot of sunlight constantly and higher temperature. And so we don't have to make any like artificial acid additions or anything like that you may have to do, in more established wine regions in the United States. So yeah, our wines kind of all have really great balance to them, I would say, and really good acidity. And none of them are like overdone. They're not like big, jammy, overly alcoholic. They're all well balanced between acid, tannin, alcohol, and I would say sugar, but they're all bone dry. There is no fermentable sugar in any of them. So there's non-fermentable sugar, which kind of leads to like palate weight and mouthfeel, but they're not sweet per se. Even my Riesling is bone dry.
When I have an opportunity to speak with an Oregon winemaker, we often talk about, because of their region, how difficult it is to grow, weather problems, all kinds of problems. In Colorado, do you feel like you are also in a region that's more problematic? And if so, yes, more or less?
Definitely.
Okay.
And
share a lesson, something you've been through recently that was really unique and odd, and the lesson you learned from it?
Well, the whole industry, because of the shortness of the growing season, it's always kind of on a knife edge, because you can have late spring frosts that can come through at bud break and just wipe you out. But you can also have like these freak, like early winter freezes in October where there's still fruit hanging, or maybe it's just come off and it goes from 70 degrees in the day to 8 degrees. And the sap's still flowing in the vines, and then all of the vines, the trunks, the cordons split. And that's what happened in Palisade maybe 3 or 4 years ago now. And then like in Cortez, where the box bar is, last year we had like a hailstorm come through just after bud break. So our Chardonnay was out, that kind of got wiped out. And then the secondary buds pushed, and we went from a crop of 36 tons to 10 tons overnight. So yeah, I mean, that's just agriculture anywhere, unfortunately. That's just one of the risks, which yeah, is unfortunate.
So as we get closer to actually talking about your beautiful wine, the ordinary fellow, Ben Parsons, is the owner and winemaker. You have an excellent sparkling wine that I was able to sample probably a week or two ago. And you also have a quote, and I'm going to mangle the quote, so help me fix it. But the question is, you mentioned about England's excitement about the sparkling. You felt like England, it's a new trend, let's say. Is that properly? But let's talk about your thoughts on sparkling. Without getting into your current bottle, because we're going to get there in a minute by itself. But why is England falling in love with sparkling wine? And why should all of us be falling in love with sparkling wine?
I think historically, England has consumed a lot of sparkling wine, just has. But in terms of actually growing grapes and making their own sparkling wine, that's happened in the last 20 years. And I guess that's one of those unfortunate advantages of global warming. In a kind of isolated geographical area, in that previously you wouldn't have been able to ripen Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier, and so it would have been a challenge making really good sparkling wine in Kent and Sussex and southeast England, where a lot of it is made. But with a few degrees temperature rise, that's now possible, and it's the same chalk escarpment as like Champagne. So, I mean, they're very close to each other. They're just separated by 24 miles of the English Channel, right? So they're actually geographically very, very close to each other, a little further than 24 miles, but climatically, like, very similar. So actually a lot of French champagne houses have bought up land in Kent and Sussex over the last 20 years and have been planting that. And now some of the bubbles that are coming out of there are like better than the French ones.
Let's talk about wine. Let's talk about their flavor profiles. Let's talk about the different bottles you offer.
Yeah. So the sparkling wine, that's a Blanc de Noir. So that's 100% Pinot Noir. That's about as geeky as it gets, because that's like single vineyard, single grower, single clone of Pinot Noir. Like entourage for like only 8 months. The base one was barrel aged for about 6 months, and then it was entourage lying on its yeast lees in a bottle for 6 months, and then it's like put on a riddling rack and hand riddled one bottle at a time, and then disgorged by hand. Just take the top off, put your thumb over the top of it so nothing comes out, and then no dosage. So again, just super geeky, like really bone dry, like really crisp, great acid. So that wine, is super hands-on. I mean, it's delicious. It still gets those more like developed kind of like brioche notes. Texturally, it's very pleasing on the palate. So I think we make really good Method Champenois bottle fermented sparkling wine. A lot of people like these days like think it's trendy to not like Chardonnay, because they heard somewhere about that. But there are actually some really good Chardonnays out there, which aren't all aged in new French oak and haven't all gone through like a creamy, buttery secondary fermentation, and I think mine is one of them. It was aged in like 8-year-old barrels, so there's really no oak influence on it at all. It was, it's all hand harvested, all whole cluster pressed. I think that wine has a really pretty texture, like this palate coating texture, but it has really good acidity, and it smells like a ripe peach or a dried apricot. I mean, it's really pretty. Our Pinot Noir, like our red Pinot Noir, again, that spent just 9 months in neutral barrels. So I think there was a trend like 20 years ago to put everything in a brand new barrel, and all winemakers thought it was cool, But in the last 5-6 years, I think that has changed, and winemakers are really trying to kind of let the soil and let their vineyards kind of speak for themselves, and so like minimal kind of intervention to a certain extent is the trend. And yeah, our Pinot Noir has done really well. It's much lighter on the style. I would say it's more like a German style Pinot Noir, like lighter, really good acidity, firm tannin, beautiful aroma. Yeah, I mean, I think all of our wines are just very well balanced, and not overly done, very food friendly, and just very clean, I would say. Like, they're not funky at all, and I'm very proud of that.
I agree with both actually. Whether it's the sparkling, the Pinot Noir, I'm a huge Chardonnay fan. This is so much fun. We're talking with the Ordinary Fellow owner and winemaker, Ben Parsons, out there in Colorado, at the Palisade, Colorado. I'm assuming balance and the clean is a style choice by you. And how do we achieve that? Because I think a lot of people do like it currently. So what is your secret to achieving, from a style point of view, from a winemaking point of view, that good balance and that clean approach?
Well, I think the balance is easy because it's kind of done in the vineyard, where because of the elevation and the retention of acidity. So it's just about when you pick it. So you're tasting it and you're tasting it for flavor and like phenolic ripeness and the seeds being brown, etc. But you're also kind of testing a few and now like the pH, your titratable acidity, and your sugar levels. And so then you kind of make an informed decision as to when you're picking it. So I think the balance part is fairly easy. The cleanliness part of it really just comes down to the fact that I feel like winemakers, even though this doesn't sound very romantic, you're almost just like an insurance manager in that you don't want to mess it up. Like, so you make informed decisions preemptively, and yes, you top your barrels like every 2 or 3 weeks, like you do things to make sure the wine does not end up flawed through like a secondary characteristic developing that some people would. Sometimes that's a flavor enhancer and sometimes that's good, but when it's overdone, and I believe there are a lot of wines that get away with it these days. To me, it's just bad winemaking. And so I'm definitely kind of minimal intervention, but if you consider topping your barrels intervention, then there's no hope for you.
Fair enough. So the two things I want to bring up that we didn't really touch on when it comes to the bottles themselves. I don't know if you agree, but I always feel like white wine doesn't get enough love and respect. People love talking about the complexities of reds. And so I'm going to bring up one white and one red that we really didn't touch on yet, because I just want to bring their taste pearls out as well. You make a phenomenal Riesling, and I don't think we touched upon that. And Petit Verdot is probably lesser known, certainly less popular, but it deserves all the love anyway. Yeah. So talk about the Riesling that you sent, talk about the Petit Verdot, And what makes them special, and what's the taste profile?
Yeah, interestingly, like I really don't drink red wine anymore. Like occasionally I'll drink some Pinot Noir, but I I much prefer drinking white wines. Like it's just I think, and I think a lot of people in the industry are like that because they like crave acidity, you know. Um, and so yeah, my Riesling is a good example. I mean, I think a lot of I think the general kind of consumer in the US still thinks that all Rieslings are sweet. And I think that's just a common misconception, you know, like that's purely a stylistic choice from the winemaker. And my choice is to allow the yeast to ferment all of the sugar until there is no residual sugar and to have a wine with high natural acidity that pairs well with food. And so that's my choice as a winemaker. And those are the wines that I enjoy most, that kind of just leave your palate just like this rasping acidity. Um, take the enamel off your teeth, you know, like and but have like beautiful aroma. And I think our Riesling is starting to show some kind of developed Riesling characteristics from being in the bottle for like 18 months, where it gets those kind of, it's tough to say it without making it sound bad, but those more kerosene kind of petroleum kind of eraser-like notes, which are very typical of Riesling, kind of intertwined with really nice citrus and green apple and yeah, and like really just good structure. So that's the Riesling, and I think it benefits from growing at elevation here for sure. And then, yeah, Petit Verdot, interesting, like one of the 6 red Bordeaux grape varieties. Um, you know, Bordeaux is maritime climate. It's much cooler than Colorado. It doesn't really get the chance to ripen as well as it does here. And so when it can ripen, it doesn't just need to get blended into Cabernet Sauvignon or something to just give it more tannin and more structure. Here it can stand alone as a single varietal. The greenness is gone. The tannin is not like just rip your face off tannin. It's well developed, like silky, velvety. I mean firm, but not like really drying like Petit Verdot can be. And yeah, just like the aromatics are very lifted on it, and it's not. I don't think you would say it's a massive red wine by any means. So that's grown at a vineyard about half an hour from Box Bar called Canyon of the Ancients, and that vineyard was planted in 2006. Um, and yeah, unfortunately, we only made about nine. I think we made 99 cases of that wine. So yeah, not that much of it, but yeah, really nice wine. It's fun to introduce people to wines that they probably haven't heard of. But wines that you know, a wine that can stand up to any like good red wines that you may have heard of.
And as we're talking about your wine bottles, do you identify yourself as a foodie? Are you big into food?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Okay.
it's definitely like one of the things I enjoy.
So whether it's your Chardonnay or your Pinot Noir, your very popular acclaimed Pinot Noir, can you pick one or two or three bottles and maybe what your favorite dish might be to pair it with for dinner tonight?
With my Riesling, I would definitely pair it with like a Thai curry, like or even like a Penang curry, something like that. I think it would do really well. I think it does really well with like Oriental food that has some level of heat to it. But also, I think it does really well with like a charcuterie plate and like some almonds and some cheese. You know, I think you can't go wrong with that. Um, and then, you know, so like my Petit Verdot, for example, like I think there is more tannin in there, and I think, you know, for those of us that like grilling, you know, you couldn't go wrong with serving that with like a ribeye. I mean, it's delicious, you know. Or if you're like cooking a little heartier food in the winter, you know, maybe like a lasagna, something that like you know can can really work with that tannin well. So yeah, I mean, I think my wines do well with a lot of different food, just because of the balance that they have. You know, they're not going to overpower the food and vice versa, which is what it's all about. But I enjoy them, you know, just having a glass on its own, to be honest, when I get home from work sometimes. So.
Once again, Ben Parsons, the owner and winemaker behind The Ordinary Fellow in Palisade, Colorado. I'm watching your Instagram quite a bit, and it seems like you're having a lot of fun sharing knowledge, showing your vineyard, showing what it's like day to day. As a winemaker, what's it like shooting that much video? Are you enjoying social media? And what's the future of you on camera with your Instagram, etc.?
You know, the one time that I do enjoy social media is when like you're in the vineyard or you're doing something that seems that other people might never have seen before. You know, then it's like, well, one, I'm kind of in awe of where I am because I feel like it comes across in those videos. Like I'm like, it's really pretty down here today, you know, like and those are beautiful vineyard sites. Or if you're like filtering a wine or racking a wine or, you know, trying or shoveling grapes, like just the imagery like can come across and really kind of show how much work is involved in it. I always struggle when I'm like, go take a photo of a bottle of wine in front of a restaurant. You know, that's I don't know how you make that look cool, you know, like to be honest. Like,
No, fair enough. I get it. Well, just so you know what, at least from an audience member, what I like about it is we're getting to know you. We're getting to know how you look at your craft and your art, but it brings us a few steps closer to the guy behind the bottles and how you see it all. So that's what I like about it.
to kind of explore their local wine regions and you know, I think in Colorado, it's people know it for its beer, but when you think about it, that the grain that went into that beer and the hops that went into that beer weren't necessarily grown in Colorado. And here you're looking at a product that all the grapes are grown here. You know, this is 100% Colorado. So I think it's really unique to kind of get out and make the most of wherever you are. But also, you know, just to let people know that, you know, we can ship our wines to 42 states. We do have a really cool wine club where we just partnered with a friend of mine who actually just started a company called Brunson Meat Co. We used to own a restaurant together called Old Major, which was a nose to tail, like full on kind of butchery, charcuterie rooms, etc. And he just came up with this. He was given this mold for dry aged beef that Mario Batali had, that John Tizar had, and he's like taken this like aging dry aged beef to the next level, and it's like really nutty and like popcorny and just beautiful. So yeah, we're partnering with him and we're doing like you know, 3 bottles of wine and a couple of ribeye kind of thing for because I mean why not, you know? Like, so I don't know, just trying to do things a little bit differently. But yeah, we're definitely very, very foodie and enjoy all that stuff.